concept is silly, ridiculous, a waste of time. They didn't want that's why they were so successful. That's why they got away.
I'm surprised they didn't go bigger, but they're funny.
Made a living in very dangerous.
This is really an integrated blue society.
Dianne Andrews in black and white.
Thank you for watching Dianne Andrews in black and white. Whether you're watching us in our 3 million television homes on CW 21, we're on Sunday afternoons, that's in 1.7 million, or whether you're watching us on Pelican Broadcasting, which is 1 million in Mandeville area, New Orleans, Lafayette, Baton Rouge, or whether you're watching us now, we're on every day from Monday, every weekday, Monday through Friday at 10:30 a.m. on WLFT Channel 30, and you can also catch us on Louisiana Film Channel, which is WLFT's app. Or you can watch us on YouTube, you can watch us on Rumble, you'll see all the handles on the screen here as I'm talking. I produce the show myself, so I pick issues that I think are interesting to you and that are prevalent now in today's society, because most international issues become local issues also. Bagram Air Force Base, international issue. One we're going to talk about today is critical race theory, a national issue that affects us locally here in the state of Louisiana. There's so many different, I could almost call them rumors, truths, facts, lies about what critical race theory really is. So I wanted to really investigate who started it, where did it come from, how did it get in our schools. It started 40 years ago by a black professor, law professor, named Derek Bell. He was in Harvard University. He had been an NAACP attorney, and he really believed that everything in the fabric of this country, even laws that were intrinsically supposed to help minorities, hurt minorities. He believed that it was in the fabric of our society, and he called it critical race theory. It came from the concept of critical theory. Then there was another white, I guess his name is Richard Delgado from Alabama, another attorney, who also named it critical race theory. Derek Bell, there was more people with them, but these are the two most prominent names. So you have to be either deaf, blind, or crazy if you haven't heard about critical race theory. I was talking to someone the other day and I mentioned CRT. She said, what's that? And I said, okay, maybe she doesn't know what CRT is, but then I said critical race theory in the schools, and she hadn't heard of it. Because Tara McCulloch of Virginia said the other day that parents should not be involved in their children's education. Back in olden days, in my time, and I think our guest times, you had the PTA, the Parent Teachers Association. The unions weren't as big as they are today for the good or the worst of it. I can't answer that. Everybody would have to talk about their own union in their own city. But they wanted parents involved. And I would think, as the candidate running against him, Youngkin, said they should be intimately involved in their children's education. After all, this is not McCarthyism. It is not Hitler's time where they wanted to take over their children, and they become a part of the state. Let's hope we're not going that way. But Attorney General Garland said yesterday and today that at some of the school boards, which they had gotten a complaint from the National School Board Association, that some people were like domestic terrorists. So they've called parents. 2 parents got arrested in Lofton, Virginia about a month ago. I saw that on television. They were asking to speak. Maybe it was, people do get vehement about their children or any issue that they're very interested in. There were no guns, no fighting, no anything. I saw it on television. So we're going to discuss it with 2 people today. On what critical racism from their perspectives are, and one is an attorney, and try to discuss what's really going on down to the state of Louisiana. Ray Garofalo was demoted by a fellow Republican head of the House, Clay Schetzner, from his position as head of the Education Committee based on some CRT stuff on June 3rd, 2021. So we're going to try to debate a little bit of that today. In fact, he was supposed to be here but had to go out of town. It would be interesting to get his perspective. But we have an attorney here, and we have another person who has started an organization in Louisiana, Save Our School. So come on back to Dianne Andrews in Black and White if you're interested in trying to find out anything. We can work together, because I always say between black and white there are always shades of gray, and we definitely need to come to the middle on this very important piece of legislation. Thank you. Come on back to Dianne Andrews in Black and White. Thanks for coming back to Dianne Andrews in Black and White. We have two guests that we're going to try to, I know with Preston, he's been on there 5 times, so I don't have to worry about any outbursts like at CRT meetings and school boards. But Preston Castille is very, very accomplished. He's been on here, this is the 5th time. And I see more stuff since 19 has been added to your resume.
Absolutely.
I mean, now he's running to be a K through 12 charter school, and even teaching aviation.
That's right.
Helix Charter Schools, I guess the name. Tell us
Well,
about
it's Helix Community Schools. And
Uh-huh.
so we have 3 schools here in Baton Rouge.
Uh-huh.
One is Helix Mentorship STEAM Academy, and that school focuses, as its name implies, on STEAM. It's a high school. It's been here for over a decade. It's located in downtown Baton Rouge. Gives our students an incredible opportunity to be exposed to everything in the local downtown area in the community. But it focuses a lot on STEAM: science, technology, engineering, arts, and
Don't
mathematics.
forget math. I was saying
You
math.
gotta-
My
you
major
gotta have-
mathematics.
You gotta
You
have
can't forget
mathematics.
math. That's
So
right.
it's a wonderful experience in
Is it
downtown
mostly
Baton Rouge.
minority
It
students
is.
in
It's
it?
about
Yeah.
90+% disadvantaged students, mostly students of color. And so we serve a very underserved population.
And people didn't know this. I've done 3 shows on school choice. So I've done homeschooling, I've done regular schools, public schools, but charter schools are still considered public schools.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Public
people
schools,
don't know
yes.
that. So the children have to pay nothing for your education, right?
Absolutely. In fact, the 2 schools we just started, Helix Aviation Academy and Helix Legal Academy, oftentimes folks come to me and say, how much does it cost? And they don't realize that it's a free public school. And if you live in East Baton Rouge Parish, you're eligible to attend.
You can apply for your school.
Absolutely.
How many students do you have enrolled?
Yeah, so at our high school, we have about 500 students enrolled.
500?
But yes, 500
You
students.
got a big
enrolled.
building down there.
We have a 6-story building. It's right across from the Chase Bank building.
Oh, yeah.
It was the old Regions Bank, Union
Yeah,
Finance Bank
sure.
building.
Yeah,
but it's a
downtown.
great urban education. And so our 2 new schools just started, and they're
Some of those
they're gonna
kids
grow.
have never seen what downtown, what there is to offer downtown, as you're saying.
Absolutely, that's right. And the idea is to give them exposure.
Right.
For our Aviation Academy, it's located on the Baton Rouge Metropolitan Airport. We have
wow.
a 10,000 square foot hangar. We have planes come in and out of it.
I need to enroll in that one.
Children get experiences that
Yeah.
you would never imagine. Some have never seen a plane other than in the air.
Right.
But now they get to have hands-on opportunities to learn about it, learn from pilots,
Wow.
learn about what it takes to build and design,
Right.
whether they're real planes or they're drones or model airplanes. It's a great opportunity for kids to learn something that you would never imagine. It's the only school of its kind located on an actual airport, and it's right here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
In the
and
country,
North
the
Baton
only
Rouge.
school of its
That-
kind of country.
Located on an airport
Yeah,
like
the only
ours.
one.
And so we have that right here, and then we have a legal academy,
That's
same
amazing.
thing,
Really?
where kids get to learn through a partnership with Baton Rouge City Court. Things we're going to talk about today in terms of CRT, where kids get to think more broadly
Right.
about what the world is and what it offers, and
And they
open
know
their
you
minds
can't
and
think about it
exposure.
if you don't know the basis of what is being offered.
Yeah, and
How do
the-
you know that there's an airport out there if you've never
Right.
been close to a plane?
That's right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. And then learn about engineering, and learn about what is happening in the tech industry and what's taking over the world, and that
You
we've
can
got
start
this
talking about
travel-
farmland from the last show, Preston, that I
there's so
did.
much going on. And
Yeah.
you just think about, we've got a space force,
Yeah,
Diane,
yeah.
where we're talking about, and we watch these billionaires in the space race that's going
Right.
to
Bezos
into orbit and to Mars and all
Yeah.
over. But the fact
And
that
they're like
our
children, right? The
well,
Bezos girls,
like
another guy,
children,
yeah, they're
but
like
it's
children.
exciting. Aren't
Yeah,
you just
it is.
excited to
Yes.
watch that competition
Yes.
and know that our young people are looking at the same thing and say, this is what we
I
can
do
do one
this.
day.
I've done 3 shows with Alyssa Carson. She is
Yeah.
the junior astronaut. In fact, we did a STEM show together. She and another lady who works in STEM, an engineer, who has a foundation doing STEM. She's in Gonzales. It was the beginning of last year. And Alyssa, as you know, is a junior astronaut. She's supposed to be going to Mars. I did a show when she was at Baton Rouge International. I did another one about a year ago. And she's some kind of young lady. If you need a speaker, I'll give you her
Yeah,
name,
well,
because
well,
she
that-
speaks all over the world in 5
That's
languages.
great. Yeah.
She's tough. Yeah,
Impressive.
she makes me, I talked to her dad, he owns Pelican Broadcasting Network, the television, and he said, I just travel with her.
Yeah.
Now,
That's great.
and this is just one thing Preston does. I mean, he was the National Alumni President for Southern University. He's still a lawyer at Taylor Porter. He's a former judge, and he's on the BESE board also. So, what do you find?
I've been pretty busy lately. but
Definitely,
I'm
and I just saw
I'm
you in
living
19.
the dream. I'm living the dream.
You
Diane.
really
I've
are.
had a wonderful career, and I get an opportunity to meet wonderful people like Ms.
Right.
Carrigan, for example.
Yeah.
And
paths.
all the
Did y'all know each
exposure in
other
the world.
before?
We've crossed paths.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But you know, it is what life is all about, and to be able to live it at its fullest, and,
Right.
then
And
to be
help.
engaged with
The
children.
key is helping others, and that's what you're doing too. And it's
Absolutely.
MCI Global. I saw something out
Yeah,
of London.
MSI Global. So
MSI,
it's
okay.
an international network of law firms and accounting firms. It's about 250 firms around the globe, and I'm on the management board for MSI. They're based in, the secretariat is based in London.
Wow.
But we had a call this
You get
morning
to go
with
to
all of our
London, right?
managers.
That's fun.
Well,
Well,
we
when
get to travel.
this is lifted,
When
I
the
guess.
world gets back to
Yeah.
normal, we'll get back to
Hold
traveling.
your breath, I
and meeting.
guess.
That's
I
right.
don't know. Hold your breath.
right.
Okay. But more people have died this year than before the vaccines of COVID. That's pretty bad. Now, Jennifer, okay, let's hear about Jennifer. You were born in Maine.
I was.
And then you moved to Maryland, and you moved to Chicago, and then March 2020, you came here, and raised 3 boys.
I did in the middle of all of those moves.
Yeah.
So I'm a homeschool mom.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
I have 3 boys.
Yeah, I did a lady who did homeschooling on one of the shows previously.
I have a pilot
And so
in the Air
you were
Force.
homeschooling. One just went to college. I know one is in the Air Force.
I
and
have
another-
a pilot in the Air Force.
Yeah.
He's married with. I've got grandbabies.
Yeah.
And with him, and then I've got a junior at LSU. He's a robotics
Yeah.
and engineering major. He hopes to go to medical school.
That's wonderful.
And then my 18-year-old is just done with high school, and he is financially very, very conservative. So he is just banking his money while he figures out what he wants to do.
Is he one of the ones I met a guy at LSU a couple of years ago? He's from New Orleans, and he started betting Bitcoin when he was 12 years old. He is a multimillionaire
He hasn't
today.
quite-
I'm so impressed.
He's
He hasn't gotten
21,
there.
22 years old.
He hasn't gotten there, but my
Yeah.
husband and I have always taught our boys that college is an investment, not an experience.
Right.
And our boys.
Can't you do a little of both, though, Jennifer? Can't you have a little bit of experience out there?
You know what? We want them to have fun.
Yeah.
But at the cost that college is these
Yes,
days, we
yes.
felt like it was really important that our boys all looked at it
Sure.
as an investment, because otherwise you
Well,
end up.
you went back to, speaking of college, you went in 2012 and graduated.
I did.
With a
While I was
psychology.
homeschooling.
Yeah, well, that was great.
Yeah.
And you just wanted the degree because you work
I
and
felt that
you've
it
done
was
a lot of mentoring and counseling and things.
I
It's in your
have.
career from all the states.
Everything I've ever done has always been around helping people find
Right.
a way to live their lives better. I've
Yeah.
served on a board of trustees at a foster care agency. I've worked as a director of missions and worked abroad in Guatemala and Haiti
Yeah.
for years,
Yeah.
helping
Your husband was,
form
you all were
strategic-
living there?
No, we
You
would
went?
go, we would travel,
Oh, yeah.
and what we did is we set up a partnership,
Uh-huh.
and we did community development because,
I
which
built
is
an
different.
orphanage in Haiti.
Well, this was different. What
Yeah.
we did was we would go and we would ask the people living there what they needed.
Yeah.
We would supply the muscle,
need
and they
everything.
were in charge.
Oh, yeah, that's good. So they got
That's
to work
different.
and build a purpose.
That was
Now, this was an orphanage
this
for,
was
for
different.
children. They were
Yeah,
young
this
children,
well,
yeah.
this was a different approach, and it's something I believe really strongly in. That when you're working with people, you don't tell them what they need.
Let them tell you.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's the-
because you often get it wrong if you tell people.
That's right, and it's the same thing that some people seem to be doing in government everywhere now.
Yeah.
They tell you what you need
Yeah.
and what you need to do. When I was
So-
at IBM, we did business process reengineering. We went to the customer. We
That's
found out
right.
what your needs were.
That's right.
And then you develop the
You
system
save a lot
around
of
what
time
they
that way.
need and money, and they get the right product at the end, and
So-
something that works for them.
Yeah.
And that's what it should all be about.
Yep.
So Jennifer, you came here in March of 2020.
Interesting
and the
time to move.
Yeah, in the pandemic.
Yep.
And you started an organization, Save Our Schools. Tell us a little bit about what that is.
So we started that organization.
When you say we, does that mean your
I
husband?
have a team. No,
Okay.
my husband is the financial force behind everything I do.
Right.
That's just our agreement. So
Yeah. You homeschool, you were working, so he
I
had to bring-
retired,
yeah.
and now I get to do what I love,
Yeah.
which is helping people and politics and all of that full time.
Yeah.
So we as my team, I have a couple of really extraordinary women that work with me. Paige
Now, you're out of
Lowry.
Mandyville, correct? You're down that
Covington.
way. Covington, okay.
Yeah, so-
That's where I did a show recently with the Louisiana Director of Agriculture and Forestry. He's from Covington
Yeah,
originally.
I know his wife well. I'm
Oh,
actually
yeah.
in a
She's
club
a
with her.
veterinarian.
She's
Yeah,
fabulous.
yeah.
So, I have a great team that stands with me. Paige Lowry, Jillian Pichon.
Just tell me what you all do.
So what we
Yeah.
do is we work with school leaders, parents, teachers. Our goal is to help parents and teachers feel like their voice is heard, that schools are places of transparency, that curriculum, professional development tools, that everything is based in truth, facts, and knowledge.
Let me ask you this. With three boys, one just 18 and just got out of high school, have you seen any critical race theory practices in the school that you think are bad? As I said, when Derek Bell who,
Right.
and
Yeah.
Delgado, who developed it, they were lawyers like Preston, and everything they believed was in the law, and that caused white people to be oppressors. And but there's another train of thought that people should understand what the racism has been in this country. So the key to me, which I believe they should, right? Because it's
it's
not a
part of-
policy. It's definitely true.
Well, there's racism. That's
Yeah,
true.
that is. But
That's part
systemic
of-
at this point, being black, I can attest to it more than you can,
I'm
probably.
sure.
And I'm sure Preston can too.
I would think-
And it is true, as Derek Bell said, his father told him as a little boy from Alabama, the one who started the concept of critical race theory, you're going to have to work 2 times harder and be 2 times smarter to get to the same place as a white person.
Yeah.
And there was systematic racism in this country. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But I truly don't believe it's systematic today. What do you think, Preston, being white? There's still racism, and there's some racism against whites too, among against Jewish people. We're not the only people. What's your take? And you have children who are in the school system still now, don't you, Preston?
I do.
Or are they
I
out?
have young kids. My son is out of college
Yeah.
and out working.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
Happy for him.
Yeah, and happy
but-
for you too, right?
Absolutely. My pocketbook is
Yeah.
absolutely grateful. But in terms of the whole concept of critical race theory, I'll be very honest. I think that the state and this country has really blown this out of proportion.
Yeah.
It is a theory that is generally taught at the law school level and at the graduate school level. And I think it is an important concept. It's
Right.
not one that's generally found in the K-12 system at all. I hear a lot of rhetoric about we shouldn't have CRT in schools, but we really don't
So
have.
you
it is
don't
not
believe it
sanctioned.
should be in
No,
K
not-
through 12?
Maybe not at certainly the early
Yeah,
ages,
yeah.
but it's like everything else. Your show is in black and white, but
Right.
there are some things that aren't black and white. There's a lot of gray.
A lot of gray area,
And so
yeah.
there are certain things that are very sensitive that may not be age appropriate yet. And then even with age appropriate, there are some sensitivities in terms of getting it
Right.
right. But in terms of the concept of itself, I think that we created something that we think is evil that frankly doesn't really exist the way many people have made it to exist.
But let me
now,
let me
to
just
answer
give
your
you a
question,
point.
though,
Yeah, okay.
in terms of the history of this country, there is absolutely no doubt that this country has a horrible past.
Right.
No doubt about it.
And a lot of other countries
And
too.
a lot of other
people should
countries
not,
too.
People are
And-
not
and
dying
it's-
to get across this border
well,
because we're the worst in the world. That's for
That,
sure.
That's absolutely right.
Yes.
And there's been discrimination
Yes.
as it relates to to people of color,
Right.
all sorts of races, and women.
Yeah.
And that happens
Sexism
in this
also,
world.
right.
It exists.
That's right.
And it is something that we need to know about.
Well, look at the
I think
Taliban
it's-
now. If
well,
we want to talk about what's going on now, the Taliban's
if
going
you-
back
if
to
you
do
don't-
the same thing
if
with
you
women
don't
they did
understand
before
the
in
history,
Afghanistan.
but more importantly, if you don't understand the impact
Right.
that history has on the world, and when certain events happen, and sometimes we say, well, we only should talk about facts, and there's a difference, particularly in education, between history and social studies. And I'll tell you, my daughter's 6th grade social studies teacher said it best, and that is, we were there for open house, and she's explaining very casually the difference in her class between history and social studies. She has a timeline on her wall, and she starts to explain to the parents, and she says, I'm not a history teacher, I'm a social studies teacher. And the reason that there is a distinction is that there are certain events that happen, but it's critically important to understand why they happen, and when they happen, what impact it has on other things in society. How does it impact people in terms of whether they can take care of themselves, whether they cause wars
Well,
or
Derek
lead
Bell
to wars?
said CRT is a social construct.
It-
That's
it-
what he said. It's in social studies.
It's a social construct in terms of the analysis of how we got to be where we are in this country. And more importantly, how do we advance and improve ourselves? We want to know history. We want to
Right.
understand what has happened to us in the past, but we use it as a tool to build on for the future, to create a
But
better
not create
society.
hatred.
But not create hatred.
Jennifer-
and I think that's where people get uncomfortable.
But I'm
that
going
it
to give you an example
fosters
for me. Then I
hatred
want to.
sometimes.
I want to hear Jennifer about her children. But a young white guy was telling me about a month ago when he was, and he's probably 19 now out of high school. He said about 8-10 years ago, I guess he was 12, something like that, 10, 12. And the teacher, I think the implementation is not well controlled in a lot of places. He told me that this white teacher put all the black kids and together, all the brown kids together, and all the white kids together, okay? She separated them. And that's what Martin Luther King fought against and died for. But, and so she told the white kids were bad and basically made him feel bad. And he went home and said something to his mother, said that
But
they
that's-
were
that-
oppressors.
That's horrible if
Yeah.
it happens just
Let's
that
hear what
way.
Jennifer has seen and her 3 boys. I think the pandemic, though, brought it home to a lot of people when they saw what their children were being taught. And I'm not talking college level, Preston. I saw one man in New York City who was paying $15,000 a year, private school, rich guy. And he took his kids out of that school because of what they were teaching to his kids in the 2nd, 3rd grade. What have you seen with 3 boys?
Well,
and
so I
recently?
homeschooled my boys, so I
Oh,
can't.
have
right.
you heard or have you worked
Well,
with
you
anybody?
asked me what our organization does.
Yeah.
So what our organization does is we take reports from parents and educators across Louisiana about what's happening in Louisiana schools, not hypothetical situations, and not just descriptions of what people want to present,
Real life.
but real life, actual documented situations. So what we have happening in our schools in Louisiana currently is we have teachers doing things like presenting topics for speech events in their course. And this
What
was
course
not,
would this be?
would be
Social
an
studies?
This is an English class.
Okay, English.
And the teacher gave a long speech about how they were justified to do this because of what they had been through in their life. Their
This is a black teacher?
I don't know. I wasn't given that piece of information. The reporter didn't feel it was relevant.
I think it
But
is.
what they did find relevant was that the person's lived experience was that their sexual orientation had made it so that they were part of an oppressed class.
The student?
The teacher.
The teacher wasn't part of an oppressed
Yes.
class because
Yes.
they may be transgender, whatever.
Whatever they were. And so they
Don't
felt
they
that
do something now called asexual, that you're
I
neither?
don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know what they.
Isn't that the new term?
I didn't have
Don,
that.
Isn't that the new term?
We give our
Asexual?
people.
Cisgender, that's it.
Well, they
Cisgender,
were not
yeah.
cisgender
That's my
because
camera
cisgender
guy.
is
He knows, I know
considered
you
to
know.
be heterosexual, is my
Right,
understanding.
that's the heterosexual, but I think asexual
This
is
person
one or the
had
other.
been oppressed, and they were not cisgender.
And
that I
they had
know.
been oppressed about their
Gender,
their sexual orientation.
their sexual orientation,
And
and,
the way
their
they
perceived gender. And they assigned topics for the children to research.
What kind of
And
topics? Yeah.
the material presented to the children to use was a list of the 32 young activists who had changed the world. And the vast majority of the people in that list were BLM activists.
Who are Marxists, and they're gay. Two of them are gay. I mean, this is on their website.
They were LGBTQ community activists. They were.
Two of them are LGBTQ.
They were.
Two of them.
Well,
the three who started BLM.
they were a plethora of the 2/3 of the people on the list were people who you would not normally place into a curriculum based on the way they lived their lives, not what they were doing for activism as much as just the way they were living their lives, the
But I guess
choices they were making.
But Jennifer, to
from
be
the activism
example that you
standpoint.
give, BLM would be
when
considered
it was
an activist.
when it was reported,
Would
to
you not
these
consider
school
the BLM
officials-
activists?
Oh yes,
Yes. Okay.
when it was reported to the school officials,
Uh-huh.
who agreed that it was outside the standard and inappropriate and that it would be corrected, the only thing that was done was the teacher was spoken to.
Well, I mean,
So
what
can
could,
I
what
jump in?
should they
Can I
give
jump
to
in
her?
just a little bit? This is a great example because Jennifer, may I call you Jennifer?
Absolutely.
Jennifer's story is perhaps a moving story, but it is not at all in the context of what we really talk about in terms of critical race theory, in terms of
See,
what
I would
happened in
disagree
that-
with you
in
because,
terms of what happened
because
to that
the
school.
teacher put it in the context of oppressor versus oppressed. And in the context of CRT and education, in the examples you see across the nation of where it is being labeled CRT by the proponents, not by the people who are fighting back, that is exactly the way it's being played out. And if I had my notebook and we wanted to go through documentation, I could show you
what I would
myriad
say-
examples from
Yeah.
Learning for Justice and all those different organizations out there that literally provide learning modules from organizations that label it with exactly those descriptors. I'm not arguing with you that there are not places for looking at history very carefully and taking a lens of, are there places where where racism has been rampant and systemic in history, and being very careful about studying those truthfully. But I question the idea
Also, do you
that
believe-
we would look at it from that lens because when we use the CRT lens, how do you judge that you know that that's what was the motivation
See, but
in
that's
history?
that's redefining the narrative. That's calling something by a different name and saying this is what it is. If you're going to have a conversation,
That's what they've defined it as.
But
Yeah,
see, that's
but
what
that's
was
the
my
point of this
beginning. I
conversation,
think
is
it's
that
gone
people
different
have
ways, different
expanded
places.
the notion of
It's
CRT
literally what the people
into
who are
something
doing
else.
it, that's what
Wanted
they call
to,
it.
that's what I
So,
said in the
and
beginning. There's
again-
no standard for what CRT is.
Well, people have redefined it because you started off, Diane, and you said, here is what critical race theory is.
Right, how it
and
started,
it is
right.
an analysis
Well, the
about
people practicing
about
it
the
have
system.
redefined it.
And when we say people very broadly, again, when we paint with very broad brushes, it is extraordinarily dangerous when we do that because, and I'm not saying, Jennifer, you're
Sure.
doing that, but if anyone's out there and they're saying, well, we're just going to lump anything that we consider to be bad to be CRT, well, that's not just
What
not
do you
true.
consider?
We're closing now, so good night. We'll see you next week.